Hello, beautiful people. It's Nameless here. Just wanted to come and say hi, talk about a couple of things. I'm just sitting here sipping this morning cup of coffee before I get that fucking workout in. Gotta keep active. Gotta stay physically active. That's just for me. It's one thing I do. It keeps my mind healthy, keeps my body feeling healthy, and it also just feels good. You know what I'm saying? Like it adds to my overall happiness, and then like I'm not quite sure why. It might just be the endorphins of the working out, but I like it. I enjoy the shit, and yeah, no, I just I think setting goals for yourself, that's a fucking good thing to do. Like to just think those thoughts, make a list for yourself, and get those daily things done. But enough about that. I talk about that enough on this show. I really wanted to talk about some other shit, some more interesting shit, because I was thinking about all kinds of really crazy shit recently. May or may not have involved mushrooms. May or may not have involved something like that. But anyway, like so we make things as human beings. Like what I was just talking about, like making a list for yourself, making thoughts, like thinking thoughts, having ideas. We have ideas, and then we turn them into things that end up out in reality. Like this device I'm using to record this video. Like somebody made that. Somebody had the idea for a tablet, this crazy electronic portable computer device with a touchscreen and all this shit. Like that's a really, really elaborate thing. Technology is a really crazy thing. Like we go all the way back to the beginning and think like human beings, not even Homo sapiens, like there were precursors to human beings, like the Homo erectus and the Neanderthals and several other fucking relatives of the Homo sapiens, like the precursors to the Homo sapien, like they had fire. Somebody somewhere figured out that if you like rub wood together, you're gonna get a portable, manageable form of an element of nature that destroys everything. Like animals know to run from fire. So like at some point our ancestors were sitting there watching fire do its thing. Like maybe they were watching a wildfire from a distance and they were studying it, analyzing it, and they somehow figured out that you could take a small piece of this giant force of destruction and turn it into a force of creation. And that just boggles my fucking mind. Like, just describing that, it seems almost implausible because we think of the precursors of human beings, like we think the cavemen. I'll call it the cavemen in layman's terms. We think of them as like really stupid compared to us. Like we're so great because we can make computers, and then like maybe we are smarter than the cavemen on like a deeper intellectual level, but that takes a serious amount of genius just to fucking to figure out like going from not knowing how to use fire to using fire. Like they figured out how to use fire before there was language, before there was culture, society, even building structures that we know of at least. Like there may have been tools before fire. I'll have to double check that one. I'm not quite sure what the timeline is according to the anthropologists, but fire was one of the first things we discovered. And it wasn't even us that did it. Like it was our ancestors who figured out fire. And then from the discovery of fire, you have this the many leaps and bounds in evolutionary growths where like what I'm saying is the discovery of fire is believed to be the cause of the evolution of to man. Like there's all different theories about what changed us from like Neanderthals and Homo erectus into Homo sapiens, like where consciousness developed and all that. But most of the developments in our species and our ancestors' species and all that shit came from the discovery of fire. It's like it starts with us being able to use fire as a tool and a weapon. It protected us at night, kept us warm, and there's all these developments that come like cultural developments too. Like after the discovery of fire, we basically changed. Like this, we changed species. And there's this really crazy theory out there called the stoned ape theory. Like it was I don't know if it was coined by Terrence McKenna, but Terrence McKenna spoke about it a lot. Joe Rogan kind of speaks about it a lot, but I honestly don't know if I buy into that. And for those of you who don't know, the theory is that human beings evolved because of the use of psychedelics, mainly mushrooms. Like that's the big belief. There's like the precursors to Homo sapiens, like the Homo erectus, the Neanderthals, or maybe even like way before that. Talk about like hundreds of thousands of years ago. Like there are some that even believe that the whole jump from monkeys to man, which isn't even the theory of evolution, by the way. Darwin never said we evolved from monkeys. That's we can talk about that some other time. But anyway, some people believe that like apes ate mushrooms, and then over thousands and hundreds of thousands of years of eating psychedelic mushrooms, they evolved into man. And I'm like that. I don't buy into that. I don't believe that at all. I'm not discrediting it. I just like for me it just doesn't seem logical. I do believe that psychedelic use may have played a role in the development of culture and language and certain things, but I think that was like way, way, way late into the game. Like, I think psychedelic use didn't come into play until after tribal societies had formed and after people had developed a need for it. Like, my personal belief and like what seems to make the most sense is that human beings had a very human beings and the precursors to human beings, like the ancestor species too. Um, I think they had an acute type of awareness and intelligence that it's different from our sense of intellectualism. It was more it was probably more animalistic, more instinctual, but they were still able to make deductions and form theories in a way that it, I don't know how they would have communicated them to each other, but they were able to like form ideas the same way our species does, the same way like a group of scientists forms a theory and then they go out and test it. Like I think that's probably how fire was discovered. Like it was probably something that people had an idea about, like a group of like the militant members of one group or one tribe or whatever the fuck it was. It could have even just been like a clan that just stuck together just for protection. Like the maybe the smarter members of the group had been studying wildfires for a great period of time, and then they went out and decided to test this idea. And like I said, I don't know how they would have communicated it to each other because they had no language, at least not that we know of. Maybe it was maybe it was all nonverbal language, hand signals, grunts, emotional tone, looks, like eye contact and something. Who knows what it could have been? But I like. I mean, I'm just postulating right now. Like I don't claim to be an expert. Like this shouldn't be considered to be like an expert there or anything like that. But I'm just like describing how I kind of envision how they discovered fire. And I'll end the description because I don't want to get too deep into that. But what I was getting at was there must have been some kind of an intelligence that was shared on a group level, like a very acute awareness and an ability to observe patterns in nature and then um, take control of those forces observed in nature, like these groups of precursors to people, like the Homo erectus and Neanderthals, I'll just say cavemen, like the groups of the early cavemen. They must have seen things and like figured out that they could manipulate the nature around them based on the patterns observed, and that was probably how they eventually rose to be like more dominant hunters and things like that. Like they were able to figure out the migration patterns and the habits of the animals around them, and then they were able to like sort of communicate and teach that to each other so that they didn't get eaten by the wolves, and then they could eventually hunt the wolves or the deer or whatever the hell they were going after. So that's that. Anyway, no. What I was getting at was you start with the discovery of fire, and then you keep going from there, and you keep extrapolating and expanding on that, and that's basically what our whole society is built on. Like all of our technology, like this thing here, the cell phone. It starts with fire. And then, of course, it takes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of different advancements to go from fire to cell phone. But that's a different, more advanced form of the use of fire, electricity, the spark. The spark that makes fire is the same spark of electricity that runs all of our technology. And so, like, we made all that as human beings. And I just wonder, like, I'm thinking about the Fermi paradox, about that's the theory of like, are we alone in the universe? And if I'm wrong on that, I'll double check that. I might be wrong. I might be thinking of a different theory. But anyway, there's the big question of aliens. Like, are we alone in the universe? And so I recently learned from an astrophysicist. He was talking to somebody in an interview, talking about how there was a recent discovery, like at least within the last 5 to 10 years, that there are so many planets in the universe that it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to think that we're alone in the universe. And I like that. It made sense the way he explained it. He was like talking about how like every galaxy has like so many hundreds of billions of stars, and then apparently every single star has a planet, and all of those planets are like at least maybe like one hundredth or one thousandth or one millionth of all of the planets in the observable sky, like in all the galaxies and all the stars, like one millionth of all of those planets are right in the Goldilocks zone, theoretically, so they could all potentially hold life. And that really throws a curveball into the question of are we alone in the universe, because like at least to like scientists, I kind of have a theory about why we haven't discovered any life out there yet, but I think it has to do with technology. Like the big question is like, there's so much life out there, why don't we see evidence of it? Like why don't we see evidence of super civilizations and technology and flying saucers and all this and that? And I'm like, well, to me, I think the obvious answer is that like they don't do what we do. Like if there is life out there on other planets, they don't look like us, they don't act like us, they may not even have the same type of consciousness. Like there may not be intelligence out there on the level of like a human being's consciousness. And if there is, like, I mean, it would be safe to assume that there is consciousness out there that's even greater than ours. Like that we're not even that smart. That there's much more intelligent beings out there. But like, why would we assume that they have this stuff, like technology, electronics? Like, we don't know if fire exists in the same way on other planets that it does on our planet. Like if it looks the same way, like if it does this kind of a thing. Because if it doesn't exist in this shape where it's hotter at the bottom and it floats up to the top of the convection current, like say maybe fire exists in a different shape on other planets. If that's the case, then like the species on that planet wouldn't be able to use fire the same way that we do. And who's to say that they needed to? Like our species developed fire and created like man-made fire was developed because we needed it. There were different things that came from the use of fire that allowed us to evolve into a higher species, according to the anthropologists at least. That again, that theory could be disproved in the future. Maybe we didn't evolve like that, but anyway, according to the anthropologists, like we discovered or created fire to keep us warm and to cook meat and to use as a weapon and for protection against other animals, and to also we eventually started using fire for like metallurgy and other forms of creation. And like I personally, I don't think that we created fire to do all those things. Like I think all of those things came after the fact. Like I think the creation of fire was just like I was saying, it was like a group of people who were trying to test an idea, that involved bending and controlling an element of nature. And they probably didn't know what or why they were fucking doing it. They're just like, hey, that fire stuff. I think the most likely reason is maybe for protection. Like other animals don't know how to use fire. No other animal uses fire like that. So like we don't have fangs and claws and fucking big strong muscles like apes and fucking bears and lions do. So it's probably possible that they were looking at fire like, oh hey, we could use that to our advantage. They won't come near us if we have the fire. Like if we have fire around us or like a fire near us, we shove it in the face of the wolves and then they'll stop fucking eating us. So that's probably what the first thing that they were trying to do with it was. And then you go from there, and they discover like all these other uses for it, because fire is a very versatile tool. I mean, as an element of nature, the controlling fire was like a serious turning point in our evolution. So I'm thinking like aliens, maybe they didn't need that. Like you think about the aliens from the series Aliens with Sigourney Weaver, they have fucking acid for blood and fangs and like scorpion tails and shit like that. Like if that's what aliens look like, or say like maybe that's just one species out there, or this is just a fucking idea. I don't know. There's probably nothing out there that looks like that. But if that's what's out there that also has consciousness, they wouldn't need fire. They wouldn't like maybe they're cold blooded. Maybe they have a completely different kind of digestive system that doesn't require like cooked meat. Maybe they live underwater. Maybe they live in a completely sulfuric environment and they eat fucking rocks. Like who knows what the hell you're dealing with on a biological level. So the to assume that they would cultivate the use of fire is kind of implausible. There may be some species out there that would also discover the use of fire, but that's so far fetched. Like that's where the curveball is, and that kind of explains the that paradox of why we haven't discovered other life out there. Like I don't think they have the same technology we do. Maybe they have something that's water based. Maybe it's like instead of taking fire into control, they took water into control, or some kind of a liquid, or they figured out how to create an electrical current sheerly through water, and it's all contained in compressed, fast moving water that gives them some kind of an electrical current to power whatever technology that they may have. But that's where it gets even more far fetched. Like the idea that they may or may not be controlling the elements around them, that's actually plausible. They may be using the fire that exists on their atmospheric conditions. It just looks different and it has a different shape, so they use it for different things. And they may be using the liquids and then the land and the plants and the environments, the other living beings. They may be cultivating and farming them like we do. But that's all theoretical. They may or may not be doing that. They may have a biology that doesn't require those things. They may not even require food or breathing, which would explain why they don't have spaceships. Like they could just take moon-sized jumps off of their planet. Maybe their atmosphere is so thin and the gravity is so light that they could literally jump into space and they just drift and float through space from planet to planet because they don't need breath, they don't need food, they just float. I don't know. These are all theories. But back to that technology thing, like most likely an intelligent species would figure out how to control the elements in its environment for one reason or another. That is plausible and most likely probable. But then to say that they have technology, electrical technology, that looks or resembles ours in any way, I don't know, I think that's implausible. Like, why would they have anything that resembles anything like what we have? Why would we assume such a thing? Like we haven't even discovered what other life looks like. We don't even know what shape it takes, how it responds to its gravity. We don't know anything about it at all. Like this, we don't even know if it's even out there, because that's the other side of the coin of the paradox. Like, are we alone? It's like, well, we might be. It could be that the conditions of the planet Earth are like perfect for life, and that's not even a rare thing. Like maybe there are planets all throughout the universe, like there's 100 billion trillion of them that are all just like Earth, and they're all perfect for life, but for whatever reason, life just didn't form there. Like it just didn't happen. It just, maybe it'll happen later on, like it just hasn't happened yet. But that's like, maybe this is it. Like this is the first time fucking like consciousness sort of like sprung up from the depths. of the deep oceans and sort of crawled back onto the land and swam around in the ocean, all that shit, like, that might not be out there. I think that's I don't buy into that either. Like I don't think that we are alone. I think that there is some shit out there, but the most likely thing is that what is out there is so literally alien that we wouldn't even recognize it. Like we wouldn't know what the hell it was. We wouldn't know it was alive until it started moving. Like we would go to some foreign planet that appeared to be completely lifeless, like barren, and then shit just starts crawling out of the ground, or the rocks themselves start moving, and we realize like, oh shit, those weren't rocks. Oh, it's trying to eat me. Ah, like that's the other thing, where you think like if we do find life out there, most of the life we're gonna find is not gonna be intelligent like us. It's probably gonna be maybe like slightly similar to the life you find everywhere else on Earth. Like if you take away all of the people and all of the morals that come from human consciousness and the ideas we make up about being nice to each other, nature is fucking evil. Everything is trying to kill each other. Nature is Crocodile versus Anaconda, Volume 2,027,027. Because they will not stop fucking fighting each other in the wild. Have you ever seen those motherfucking videos on YouTube? They're wild. So goddamn wild.